Loki Pokey Episode 1 opens with the aftermath of the Avengers. We follow the endgame depiction of Loki's apprehension, but we follow his POV instead, as we witness his escape as Thor yells for his brother's name and it echoes into the black void. Sinister music plays over the MCU logo, therefore we're immersed into the mind of someone who loves appearing as a villain, which is anchored when he arrives in Mongolia, declaring his mission once again to rule over its confused people.
And I am burdened with glorious purpose.
However, the Time Variant Authority arrives to arrest him, using slow-mo to quite literally disable him. So this is a story about a performer ripped off his stage and is forced to take off his mask. Loki is brought into a retro-looking office. He can't escape, he's stripped. I can't wait for the gif. Given a prison-like jumpsuit and is forced to go through various tedious procedures, from signing a stack of papers that includes everything he's ever said, confirming he's an organic creature with a soul, although he does doubt for a second, so his confidence is fallible despite his big persona.
What if I was a robot and I didn't know it?
And he's forced to join a line where he watches a cartoon. The TV explains the history of this entire organization, where a long time ago a cross-time war happened, which almost destroyed everything, but 3 lizard dudes called the Timekeepers arose to keep everything in one timeline,
bringing peace by reorganizing the multiverse into a single timeline.
Subsequently, one of the dangers to this reality are variants, people who have veered off the course of their own expected fates and has caused a nexus, which risks creating the multiverse. Loki rejects all of this, but then sees the dude who's also refusing get frickin' disintegrated, so in fear he quickly complies. As a result, there's 2 initial connotations. On one hand, we're introduced to how this organization, the TVA temporal bureaucracy, works.
Please sign to verify this is everything you've ever said.
Which in itself can be interpreted as a fun metatextual joke on how ludicrously intricate and organized real-life American superhero comic cultures actually become, in the sense that to protect continuity, there literally needs to be organizational systems used to classify, validate, and excuse retcons.
Timekeepers. The sacred timeline.
But on the other hand, these procedures are about hazing Loki, to strip away a layer of his pomposity so he can at least respect the environment he's in and to force him to look at himself with more accountability. Afterwards, we cut to 1549 as Owen Wilson examines a corpse and comforts a little girl. He then shows up in Loki's trial, echoing the scene from Thor Dark World.
Madam, a god doesn't plead.
I really don't see what all the fuss is about.
Look, this has been a very enjoyable pantomime, but I'd like to go home now.
It's not that I don't love our little talks, it's just I don't love them.
Loki has violated the timeline by escaping with the Tesseract, but he rejects this case. Instead, he passes blame onto the Avengers for going back in time in the first place.
I suspect the Avengers. You see, I only came into possession of the Tesseract because they traveled through time. No doubt in a last-ditch effort to stave off my ascent to God King.
That's quite an accusation.
However, their actions were actually totally expected by the Timekeepers. Loki tries to escape and screams,
"But you ridiculous bureaucrats will not dictate how my story ends!"
It's not your story, Mr. Laufeyson. It never was.
And before taken away, Owen Wilson defends him. With the intent to recruit him, they sit down and Owen Wilson begins to ask what Loki's imagined future is. Loki wants to also conquer space as a liberator, to exempt people from freedom so they won't have to feel the shame or regret from their own decisions.
Because I'm the monster parents tell their children about at night.
For nearly every living thing, choice breeds shame and uncertainty and regret.
I could have done it for you, for all of us.
There's a fork in every road, yet the wrong path always taken.
You give up the Tesseract, you give up this poisonous dream. You come home.
Therefore, Loki is a pretty deeply insecure person who has projected his own fears and insecurities onto the world and is trying to fix himself by fixing the world in his own weird way. He's a product of trauma. I know, I had to sneak that word in there. No. Trauma is when you lose authorship of your own life because an event is so painful that you can't consolidate it into your self-identity. Loki's story before the show was always about him trying his best to discover his ability to author his own life and to write a story that's true Is he defined by his blood, his position, or his redemption?
So why did he lie?
He kept the truth from you so that you would never feel different.
Loki, I thought the world of you. I thought we were going to fight side by side forever, but at the end of the day, you're you and I'm me.
You are our son, Loki, and we your family.
As a child, Loki had self-esteem issues due to Thor. As an adult, he got rid of him and took the throne for himself. However, after he got everything he wanted, he also discovered the very foundations of all of his desires was a lie. He's not even an Asgardian, but a frost giant. However, he doesn't reject his cultural heritage. Instead, he planned to wipe out his frost giant one instead. He kills his real father Laufey, begin killing all the frost giants, but his genocidal plans don't quite work out, and in the face of shame, he lets go and dies. His resilience towards his trauma is gone. This Loki, the son, dies. As a result, when he returns in the Avengers, he's a straight up supervillain who's made a deal with the devil to rule over Earth, which on one hand is to screw Thor over, but it's also designed to imitate him so he could recognize himself on similar merits as a king of his own realm. Furthermore, after he's defeated, his commitment with his new identity as a villain causes him to push away his family until his mother died, which acted like a second traumatic rupture, an event too painful to be able to be involved in a story of being a villain.
No more illusions.
So he writes a new life story, one where he's not a villain, nor even his father's son, but his mother's son.
I didn't do it for him.
Therefore, after he faked his death and became king again, the first thing he does is to build a legacy for himself as a hero, with plays and statues dedicated to his own arc. Therefore, for all intent and purposes, the Loki that fell off the Rainbow Bridge is back. He doesn't want to conquer, but to be accepted.
My sons, I've been waiting for you.
And in the end, he saves his people and dies for his bro. Loki's original arc was a circle. He started out as the son, became the wannabe king, and returns as the son again. The Loki we see here in the show is the wannabe king.
You want to be king? I don't want to be. I was born to be.
A guy who plays a villain in order to feel like he's the one writing his own story. But this has only magnified his insecurities.
Who controls the would-be king? I am a king, not here!
Owen Wilson then deepens this insecurity by showing him the consequences of his actions and how inconsistent they are with his belief and self-identity.
Do you enjoy hurting people?
Initially, Loki is ashamed like he was in the Avengers, but he once again hides it under his inherited privilege.
Did you enjoy hurting them? I don't have to play this game. I'm a god.
Owen Wilson also reveals Loki was actually D.B. Cooper, a real-life unsolved mystery man. In the MCU, I guess Loki just lost a bet with Thor, so wacky stuff, I guess. These various memories are used to emphasize how incredibly powerful and all-seeing the TVA is, and is also designed to put on display Loki's own dishonest relationship with himself, which reaches its peak when he's shown the future. His arrogance will eventually push his mother away and lead the Dark Elves into killing her. The blade runs even deeper when Owen Wilson asks,
"Now why don't you tell me, do you enjoy hurting people?
I don't believe you.
Do you enjoy killing?
I'll kill you.
What, like you did your mother?"
Owen Wilson concludes that Loki's role is merely a villain, someone whose only purpose is to push others into greatness. It's very metatextual.
You weren't born to be king, Loki. You were born to cause pain and suffering and death. That's how it is. That's how it was. That's how it will be. All so that others can achieve their best versions of themselves.
Although Owen Wilson then gets called out and Loki escapes. So this entire portion of the episode is extremely self-aware. Owen Wilson is literally analysing Loki not as a person but as a literary subject through the lens of his purpose in the genre.
Alright, now you're the king of Midgard, then what? Happily ever after?
Furthermore, Loki rewatches his life by literally rewatching the movies and fast-forwarding back and forth in them, while we're watching a TV show with the characters themselves existing and watching TV. So the whole TVA organization is a weird interstitial space between the audience and the internal universe, and it's subtly building a satirical commentary on the culture the superhero genre has produced, from a consumer-level obsession with consistency and continuity to the producer idea of what the character can and should be. It's very weird. I wonder where he's gonna go with it. Everyone then looks for Loki, who uses the dude from the front desk to get the Tesseract again. But then he also sees loads of Infinity Stones just lying around treated frivolously. As a result, Loki is at awe over the magnitude of the agency. He's humbled once again, but there's also a slight hint of him scheming something, possibly. Afterwards, he returns to the interrogation room to confront the limits of his nature, to re-watch the death of his mother. In tears, he also watches the death of Odin, who died addressing him as an equal to his brother. He watches Thor's love and finds pride in seeing how he rises to reconcile with him. But his happiness is shattered when he sees his own death from Thanos' hand. From guilt to catharsis, he arrives in horror. And also laughter over his own life. His glorious purpose is pretty ironic.
What's so funny?
Glorious purpose.
Loki realizes he never actually had any power to write his own story, and this breaks him down. The mask of the villain shatters, but he still lashes out. He attacks with the guard, uses her to experiment with the technology and to torture her. A hint of his potential threat as a villain is kind of played, but he doesn't leave. This was all really just hot air. He can't go back, and he tells Owen Wilson the truth.
I don't enjoy hurting people. I do it because I have to, because I've had to.
Okay, explain that to me.
Because it's part of the illusion.
Your father...
He's not my father!
Then am I not your mother?
It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear.
You're not.
Always so perceptive about everyone but yourself.
The desperate play for control.
But Owen Wilson begins to reassemble Loki with an opportunity to work for them, because out there's another evil Loki that's going around killing the TVA men. Tom Hiddleston has said Loki is about identity and about integrating the desperate fragments of the many selves that he can be, and perhaps the many selves that we are. Therefore, the show builds upon the two key themes from Loki's journey from before: trauma and heritage. What defines your life story? What you lose or what you choose? That actually rhymes. What the fuck? The many mask Loki wears is an illusion to distract himself from deciding which. To write himself as a villain gives him a sense of power, but he loses touch with the truth of his relationships. But to write himself as a son would require him to accept his wrongdoings and disempower himself. The show has now given him a third path. What is it? Well, I guess we'll have to see, kids.
See, Loki, life is about growth, it's about change, but you seem to just want to stay the same. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you'll always be the god of mischief, but you could be more.
I can't offer you salvation, but maybe I can offer you something better.
So that was my Loki video, everyone. Special thanks to everyone on Patreon, and I'll hang out with you guys soon. You can pick whatever the next video is going to be about.
I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again.